Today we would like to delve into the life story of Maximilien Robespierre, one of the most significant and controversial leaders of the French Revolution. So, please join us as we explore the life of this remarkable revolutionary together. Maximilien Robespierre was born on May 6, 1758, in the city of Arras. His father and grandfather were both lawyers, while his mother was the daughter of a humble liquor merchant. When Maximilien was 7 years old, his mother passed away and his father, devastated by grief, disappeared for a long time. Eventually, news of his father's death reached the family, and during this period, Maximilien lived under the care of his grandfather. During his school years, he was a reserved and determined individual who rarely engaged in play or conversation with his peers. However, this very determination led his teachers to make great efforts to secure a scholarship for him, allowing him to study law at the University of Louis the Great. At this university, he became acquainted with many advocates of freedom and immersed himself in extensive literary and philosophical studies. He was particularly drawn to the ideas of Rousseau and developed a deep admiration for them. He even had the opportunity to meet Rousseau in person, and the renowned philosopher himself was impressed by Maximilien's intellect and wit, taking the time to explain certain passages of his books to the young Maximilien. Robespierre completed his university education at the age of 24 and returned to his hometown to practice law. He achieved considerable success in this profession and gained immense popularity by defending the rights of the common people more passionately than his clients. He fought against the injustices inflicted on the people by those in power. In 1788, amidst years of economic and social turmoil in the country, Louis XVI called for the convening of the Estates General. Robespierre, by publishing statements about the country's situation and the urgent need for fundamental change, emerged as a candidate for the elections. He participated in this assembly as a representative of the city of Arras, elected by the ordinary people or the Third Estate. In this assembly, Robespierre emerged as a fervent advocate for political and social transformation. He aligned himself with the radical Jacobin faction, which sought a complete overhaul of the existing political system. Robespierre strongly believed in the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and wholeheartedly fought for the rights of the people in this assembly. However, this assembly faced various obstacles, and ultimately Louis XVI issued an order to dissolve it. Unfortunately, this order resulted in the dissolution of the assembly, and the representatives intensified their criticism of the court and the corruption during Louis XV's reign. They even conducted their sessions on the streets of Paris, alongside the people. Eventually, all the representatives took an oath not to disband until a new constitution was drafted. When Louis learned about this, he allowed the assembly to reconvene but secretly sought military assistance from foreign governments. As the French people became aware of this, the French Revolution entered a new phase, and they took remarkable actions to secure their rights, the most notable one being the storming of the Bastille prison. The Revolutionary Council found itself unable to control the situation. On one hand, armed citizens in Paris pressured the council to take action, while on the other hand, peasants across the country revolted against the feudal lords, resulting in widespread bloodshed and conflicts. The peasants demanded the abolition of feudalism. In such circumstances, Robespierre criticized the monarchy and aristocracy in the council and advocated for the rights of workers. He firmly believed that the republican system should replace the monarchy to ensure the welfare of the French nation. During this time and afterward, Robespierre faced mockery from fellow representatives due to his rural accent, and his speeches in the council were not as passionate as those of Mirabeau. However, as time went on, it became evident that Robespierre was one of the few individuals who tirelessly fought for the nation's interests. Unlike other representatives, he was not driven by personal gain, especially after Ronimar's speech, where he was hailed as incorruptible. This significantly increased his popularity among the people. After enduring significant struggles, the National Assembly finally approved a new constitution, which transformed France into a constitutional monarchy. However, shortly before the enactment of this law, Louis XVI and his family attempted to flee Paris but were captured before they could leave the country. This failed escape further strengthened the determination of the Republicans to establish a republic. However, since the Royalists still held considerable power, they managed to appease the people's anger and pass the constitutional monarchy law. Soon, historical conflicts with Austria reached their peak due to the actions of foreign agents. Eventually, with the appointment of a government committee from the Girondin party, who believed in spreading the revolution to other countries through warfare, the war began. However, the French faced defeat right from the start because the king and queen had disclosed the war plans to the Austrians. In response, the Assembly took decisive action by dismissing 6,000 royal guards and exiling anti-constitutional priests to one of the colonies. Surprisingly, Louis XVI refused to sign any of these decrees. He dismissed his ministers and, despite widespread protests from the Jacobins, remained firm in his decision. Nevertheless, the French people still showed support for the king. However, everything changed when the Brunswick Manifesto was issued, turning the French people against Louis. The manifesto declared that Austrian and Prussian forces would attack France to restore power to Louis, and anyone who resisted them would be considered an enemy of the king. This united the French people against both foreign invaders and the king, whom they saw as complicit. Eventually, the Republicans decided to depose the king and, with the aid of volunteer forces, they stormed the royal palace and took control. The Assembly voted to dethrone Louis XVI, and a temporary committee of 6 members, with Danton playing a significant role, was formed to take charge. Subsequently, the National Assembly declared that a national convention would replace their previous body, the National Assembly. Following these events, the power of Robespierre and the Jacobins grew significantly, and they effectively governed the country, even orchestrating the September massacres. During this period, numerous opposition prisoners were killed without trial in an attempt to eliminate internal enemies of the revolution. On August 10, 1792, the National Convention commenced its work and, in its first action, abolished the monarchy and established a republican system. Under the pressure exerted by Robespierre, they ordered the trial of Louis XV, which ultimately resulted in his execution at the age of 38. His execution prompted foreign enemies to declare war on France and sparked rebellions that deeply troubled the National Convention. To address these challenges, the National Convention issued a series of orders. They formed the Revolutionary Army, consisting of 300,000 soldiers, established the Committee of Public Safety, responsible for apprehending suspects, created a revolutionary tribunal for the trial of the accused on March 10, 1793, and formed the Committee of National Salvation, which possessed the authority to issue decisive verdicts to eliminate internal and external enemies. Danton emerged as a prominent leader within this committee. Additionally, the National Convention issued a death sentence for immigrants and anti-constitutional priests. During this time, conflicts between political parties within the Assembly grew more intense, and the Girondins made a move to bring Rani Mara to trial for his alleged role in the September massacres by abolishing the immunity of representatives. However, Mara was acquitted in the trial and returned to the Assembly. It was at this point that Mara and Robespierre decided to undermine the Girondins. With the backing of the people and military forces, they expelled 29 representatives from the Girondin party from the Assembly, gaining control of the majority of the convention. This marked the establishment of a revolutionary dictatorship, with Robespierre as its primary leader. He assumed leadership of the Committee of National Salvation, taking over from Danton. The Committee of National Salvation took decisive actions to rescue the country, such as strengthening the army and regulating prices. However, they also initiated a period of terror and executions, where revolutionary courts had the authority to try and execute individuals suspected of opposing the revolution without the right to appeal and other basic rights. Notably, Marie Antoinette became one of the well-known figures executed during this period of terror, along with representatives of the Girondins and many other opponents. From April 1793 to July 1794, approximately 12,000 people were executed across France. Following these measures, the internal situation of the country began to stabilize, and France also achieved victories against its international adversaries. The overall condition of the nation improved, prompting some representatives, including Danton, to advocate for an end to the bloodshed and executions. On the other hand, some individuals aimed to separate religion from politics and took action to dismantle the Catholic Church in France. This group came to be known as the anarchists. However, within a span of 2 months, Robespierre suppressed both of these factions. The leaders of the first group harbored hostility towards him, ridiculing his manner of speaking. As for Danton, he enjoyed immense popularity among the general public, which evoked jealousy in Robespierre. The second group contradicted Robespierre's belief in the necessity of religion for society. To eliminate the anarchist faction, Robespierre enlisted Danton's help and accused them of conspiring to dismantle the convention and overthrow the revolution. He attributed the food shortages in Paris to their actions and subsequently arrested the leaders of this faction. Within a period of 10 days, all of them were executed. Just 6 days later, Robespierre accused Danton and his associates of conspiring to restore the monarchy and brought them to trial. While Danton's defense statements gained public support, Robespierre and his allies claimed that the defendants were inciting the people. Consequently, the trials continued in their absence. Danton and his associates were executed 10 days after their arrest, marking the beginning of Robespierre's absolute rule, which lasted for 4 months. Later on, Robespierre introduced the prairial law, which allowed the courts to issue judgments without strict adherence to laws or formalities. This law triggered a massive wave of terror, resulting in the execution of nearly 1,400 people in Paris alone within 47 days from June 10th to July 27th. Among the victims was Antoine Lavoisier, a renowned chemist. During this time, news of the French victory in Belgium reached the public, instilling a sense of relief that the country was no longer in immediate danger. People began demanding an end to the executions, and representatives from the Committees of Punishment and National Salvation, who feared Robespierre's power, decided to overthrow him. Over the course of 3 tumultuous days in the National Convention, through dramatic and historic events, Robespierre, his brother, and several others were sentenced to execution by guillotine. On July 28, 1794, the life of this controversial revolutionary and one of the key figures of the French Revolution came to an end. Thanks for watching this video. Please comment your opinion about Robespierre in this video. Until next time.